up, guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. I wanted to talk to you guys about a logo that I've been noticing all over the place. Now, I started to notice this logo a couple months ago, and I didn't want to jump on it immediately. I wanted to sort of sit back and see if this logo is actually present in some of the major products, elements, and stuff like that before I sort of made my decision on whether or not there's any significance to it. And all indications are that, yes, there is significance to it, and not necessarily from a obvious standpoint of any kind of occultism per se on every occasion, but we've been discussing portal propaganda, and it seems like this spiral logo, the use of the spiral, and I'll go over a bunch of them in a minute here, but it seems to be prevalent in a lot of products. Now, before we even get into it, let me read for you what the spiral represents according to the Element Encyclopedia of Secret Signs and Symbols. This was actually put together by Adele Nosdar. It's a book I picked up just in Barnes & Noble, I think, at some point a couple years ago, and it just gives a simple explanation of a bunch of symbols from various secret societies and occultism and all that stuff. And what it says about the spiral is very interesting. It's a good summary here, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. Quote, "The spiral shown here comes from the Tibetan tradition and is the symbol used to describe the origins of the universe. The spiral shown here turns in a clockwise direction, following the path of the sun, symbolizing the seed of potential energy. A good way to understand the power and movement contained within the spiral is to think of a coiling spring. This particular emblem looks like a drawing of a snail shell. Indeed, the spiral crops up in many places in the natural world, in both flora and fauna and in other phenomena, and has inspired not only artists, but also mathematicians and philosophers. The unfurled fronds of the tree fern in New Zealand inspire the spiral motifs in Maori art. The tremendous energy of the whirlwind, or twister, is a physical example of the energy and power that can be contained within the spiral. The spiral is rich in symbolic meaning. It radiates optimistically out from its center, ever expanding, full of endless possibilities. It has a three-dimensional quality that speaks of a journey in time, from the past to future. The spiral represents the cylindrical phases of evolution, and somehow inspires a curiosity about what is coming next. Spiral motifs appear all over the world, from Neolithic cave complexes in Europe, on carvings of the goddess from the Paleolithic era, on Celtic stone carvings such as the one at Newgrange, in the Hindu pantheon where it appears, for example, as the Kundalini serpent, woken up from its tightly coiled state, spiraling up from the base of the spine. In Africa, the symbol for the sun shows a cooking pot surrounded by 3 red spirals. The Aztec feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl shared the similar symbol as the Tibetan seed of life. Their warrior god, Huitzilopochtli, has a coat of arms featuring 5 spirals contained within a circle. The double spiral weaves in one direction and then in the next, a reminder of death and rebirth. In Hindu temples, pilgrims walk in a circular path around the various shrines, taking an additional spiral around ritual objects such as the lingam or yoni. This clockwise journey is not only a meditative process, but changes the energy of the place. There is also a possible apocryphal story that Britain managed to repel a possible German invasion during the Second World War, when a massed group of witches met together to protect the country by concentrating on creating a huge spiral-shaped pillar of energy. There are dances and movements too, which recreate the energy of the spiral. Perhaps the most dramatic instance of this is the Turkish whirling dervish. A more sedate example is the folk dance that involve a spiral line of dancers circling in and out from a central point. The same idea is echoed in the spiral dances of Native Americans. Spiraling back to the symbol on the snail shell, it is fascinating to note that for the Mayans, the winter solstice was considered the start of the year, the time just before real time began. The symbol that represented this concept was the snail. The spiral on its shell inspired the Mayan sign for 0. End quote. So there you go. That's what the spiral represents. There's other symbols here in the book that derive from the spiral. For example, the Pictish swirl script uses a swirly version of the 26-letter Roman alphabet, and it is used in Wicca for spellcasting, which is interesting. You also have the idea of a labyrinth. And what's alarming about the labyrinth is, I kind of touched on it with that last quote, but it's used to symbolize death and rebirth. And the one thing alarming about the labyrinth symbol, it's a little bit different from a spiral, but it's been used in a lot of Christian churches. And this is where, we start seeing the New Age influence in the modern church. But let me read for you a snippet from the explanation of the labyrinth that might interest you. Labyrinth patterns were adopted by Christian churches, the earliest of which is in Algeria at the Reparatus Basilica, dating back to the year 324. There is generally held to be significance in the number of concentric shapes or layers of the path, and also its length. The famous labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral, for example, has 11 concentric circles and is exactly 666 feet long. Because the number 666 is usually misconstrued as having evil origins, this has led to some wild conspiracy theories about the designer of the labyrinth, but 666 is a sacred number, the number of humankind. In the center of this particular labyrinth is a 6-petaled flower that conceals the hexagram or seal of Solomon within it, a reminder that labyrinths are sometimes called Solomon's maze. So, of course, this author is coming from an occult perspective, so obviously the number 666 will not trouble them. And again, there are other derivations of the spiral symbol. You have the Choku Rei, which is used by Reiki healers. So the point is here, every time there is the use of a spiral, it is used in terms of magical spells, or like I mentioned earlier from the first quote, is sort of supernatural or universal context. Now, the spiral logo has been around for a long time, and I'm not saying every company or every organization that uses it is necessarily nefarious or anything like that, but there are some curious ones, and at the end I'll share with you some of the ones that drew my attention to this whole topic in general. Now, first off, we have a list here on splorp.com. It's actually just kind of a business website that critiques logos, and there's a bunch of logos here with a spiral that's being used, and some of them were surprising, some of them were not, and half of these companies are no longer in business, so, that tells you something. Now, first off, you have Internosis. It was supposed to be the leading information technology consulting, business, no longer in service, used a green spiral. Web Magic, another company that used the logo of the spiral as part of a hand in their logo, a bunch of them free report. General Magic, interesting. They are also no longer in business, but it was actually a group of Apple alumni who had a vision of creating a mobile computing platform. So this is a few years ago now. And you also have Nautilus, which again, Apple alumni trying to create a file management system. You have Paperloop, more business stuff, Plumtree, Beep.com, Digigram, Emations, another internet company, Space to Go. It's a free office web service. SCT, Global Information Technology Solutions Company. I think they're out of business too. Raging Search, another company with a spiral logo. Starwood, a star in the center of a spiral. Interesting company. It's basically a company that just helps you get resorts and hotels and stuff like that. I don't know if they're still around. There's a website. I don't know how operational they are. The Science Museum of Minnesota uses a spiral. Lending Tree, interesting, Lending Tree, a financial institution, uses the spiral logo with a little leaf in there. Get Plugged, I don't think they're around anymore either. Well, which is the Whole Earth Electronic Link, and I think they're still around, but I don't know how prevalent they are. They were created in the 80s, I think. There's a bunch here. I'm not going to go through every single one. You have Timber Tech, which is actually just a wood company. Cyclone, the Contemporary Arts Center. You have Black Hole Inc. ASICS, the athletic gear company. It's has an A, but it's also a spiral. Very interesting. Chaos Multimedia used a spiral logo, and it was actually a fractal generator for your computer. Interesting. They all have this computer connection, which is fascinating. You have Python, which is, you have a snake logo in a spiral. They are literally just a marketing company, which probably shows you what the true spirit behind marketing really is. You have eSociety, I Belong. Hilton has a little spiral on their logo. Very interesting. That Hilton is one of those rich families. What do they know? You have Topeka, Housewares.org, Transpoint, Cosmo Software, Chorus, Octopus. A lot of these are web-based internet companies. Second Spin, Sybase 42C Communications Wave, Go to Orlando, Keilani Hotel. Now this one was interesting. NVIDIA. Most of you guys who do graphics and things like that, you guys are familiar with the NVIDIA logo, which is a eye, but also a spiral. And actually one of the spiral logos on my list is Time Warner Cable, which also has an all-seeing eye, but a spiral involved with it. Very interesting. The website eve.com, it was originally, I guess, a beauty company, and now obviously eve.com is this game online that's pretty big, pretty popular. You have pets.com, Snowball, monster.com has a spiral. Evolution Online Systems has a spiral. Lightwave 3D, which is a 3D company, has a spiral. Mindspring, Corbis, Debian. Now another one that I found on this list, Sega Dreamcast has a spiral logo. Of course, Sega Dreamcast being a video game company that, again, very interesting that such a company would use that spiral logo because it seems to invoke some kind of occultic meaning. So I'll let you guys go through each one of these. I didn't go through every single one. While this list has, a good chunk of logos that have spirals in them, it's in no way extensive, okay, because there are tons more. Now, let me bring up a couple more here. You have the website Second Spin, which is kind of a music website. They use the spiral for the O, and some of you might say, well, that's just a record spinning. So again, may not be any connection, but it's highly suspicious. Now, here's something really interesting that I found, and it's kind of troubling if you ask me. But TCU, which is Texas Christian, came up with a game called Downward Spiral Game. It's a board game that you don't want to play, is how they promote it. Basically, it's used to help people with drug addictions or, some sort of substance abuse, things like that. And here's the board game. I guess it just meant to force people to look at the direction of their lives if they continue doing what they're doing. I don't know if it's a practical thing or what, but interesting that they would use the spiral logo. And again, Christian institution, I guess they had their right intention behind creating a logo with a spiral on it. But it always makes me wonder. So that was interesting, but let me get to the main ones here. Now, recently there was a movie that came out called Home, and this was a kid movie about these aliens that come to Earth. It was a, animation, and the O of home is a spiral. Very interesting. You also have Tinkerbell. Now, Tinkerbell, the TV show, it just might be a design thing, but in her wings, there are spirals. I'm just throwing it out there. A game that's really popular. This is a spin-off of World of Warcraft. It's a game called Hearthstone. It's kind of a card game type deal where you sort of battle with cards and characters and that sort of thing. It's got magic in it and all kinds of stuff. The O of the Hearthstone is a spiral. You have the Lego Dimensions that we've talked about. This Portal propaganda uses a spiral. And then, let's just talk about all of the spiral and portals that we've seen on the TV shows that, I'm not going to go through all of them here, but pretty much every single cartoon on Disney XD has portals in them. And you also have Tomorrowland, which, I really was trying to get to do the review, and I still might do it. I'm going to have some time next week, so I might get to that, but that had something to do with spirals and portals. And I already mentioned NVIDIA and also Time Warner Cable, which has that eye, which turns into a spiral. So what's with all this spiral imagery? If you guys remember back in 2009, we had what is now known as the Norway Spiral. Very interesting thing that happened out in Norway. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, had just received the Nobel Peace Prize before he had done anything. And, has it worked out? Has he brought peace to the world? I would say no. But in any case, this strange spiral was seen over Norway, and it's been the center of conspiracy theory talks for a long time. Now, at the time, they reported, it was just a rocket test. But I'm sorry, rockets do not do that. Even experts came out and said, no, that's not a rocket. So what was it? We don't know, but it was also around the time when CERN was fired up and, they were trying to do their thing. So very strange. I'm sure there are tons of more places with spirals. I'm only one guy. I can't go through every single one. Keep an eye out for them. Leave a comment if you see another one. But the point here is that I think, especially with these more recent developments of, using the spiral in all these logos. I think what's happening is they are trying to not only promote the portal idea as propaganda, but also invoke some kind of magic spell. I really do think that the elite are using these symbols to conjure in our minds a sort of subconscious suggestive thing where, oh, we are creating this connection point with this other world, whether it be virtual or another dimension or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's taking us away from reality. And in fact, the Vigilant Christian just made a video about this new video game platform called Playmation. Okay, and one of the logos that's being used as part of the Playmation is that labyrinth. It's not an exact spiral, but it is that labyrinth sort of portal looking logo. So again, it's everywhere, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. Keep an eye out for it. I'm guaranteeing that you'll see it more and more and more. And actually, this Playmation thing is quite disturbing in that, they really are trying to push this transhumanist idea onto kids. The interconnectedness and the wearable technology revolution is well underway. They're really promoting it to kids. This is just a platform for the mark of the beast. I mean, I think most of us can see that. Of course, the right arm, it's not exactly the right hand, but the right arm gets attached with some kind of light, which of course invokes the idea of a mark of the beast type of technology. And again, not saying that that's exactly what they're doing or that they know that they're promoting that necessarily, but this whole idea of imagination being made real is the direction that our children are headed, where the culture and the world is taking us. It's taking us away from reality. It's taking us into this virtual reality. And the way to do that is to create a path, some sort of portal, whether it be an actual physical portal, like maybe the one we saw in Norway in 2009, or just a metaphorical portal where we're just literally taking our minds off of what's important in this life and spending all our time down the, digital portal, which interestingly enough in IT, in information technology, they call a lot of these platforms portals. That's just the name of it, just because that makes sense. So just keep this in mind, look for it. Don't be surprised if there's more, logos and things like that use the spiral. And in terms of just portals itself, we actually just spoke to Chris Putnam for a complete interview on Canary Cry Radio. I'm working on publishing that, so look for that in a day or two. And he had some really interesting things to say about some stuff he captured on video, but not just that, but the things he heard from Native Americans when he went and researched on the ground. So look out for that, because it all kind of connects. It all seems to connect to something more interesting going on. And it appears to be connected to biblical prophecy in many ways. And this idea of either the return of the Nephilim or the return of some sort of spiritual entities that were on the earth back in Noah's day, perhaps they are returning in a physical form through these portals, and they want to get into our minds. Because ultimately, I do believe that the pineal gland that we have, everyone talks about the third eye and all this stuff. I do think that it is a form of a portal in our own bodies. Our own bodies serve as portals. And so the New Agers sort of have it right. The problem is, they focus on meditation, they focus on clearing the mind, contacting spirits, all this stuff. A lot of that, I think, happens through that pineal gland. The point is, what spirit are you calling upon? Are you testing the spirits, and are you testing it against the Word of God? And the main thing here, I think, the Holy Spirit coming upon us believers could be through that portal in our minds. It could be through the pineal gland. I'm not saying it is. I definitely need to do more research there. But the idea of the pineal gland being a portal, I can go with that, but just be careful, because that doesn't mean we can just traverse into our minds and whatever without any restrictions or anything like that. I think when we fell out of the garden, I think there was some sort of blockade created there. I think certain drugs and certain rituals and things like that breach that barrier that's there for our protection. And also God could take us through there on His will, but when we try to break that, then we are basically going into territories that we shouldn't be, and we might encounter entities that will not be nice to us. And so it's really important that we keep our focus on the Word of God and put on the full armor of God so that we are protected from the fiery darts of the enemy. So that's all I have for you guys for this video. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. Please share your comments. Be nice. Please no profanity. I know some of you guys just love to use your profanity, but I like to keep that to a minimum on here. And I would appreciate it if you guys would do that and share the video and subscribe. Oh, one thing, I just hit 50,000 subscribers. That's really awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing and talking about my channel and my videos and stuff like that, positive and negative. Even if you have nothing good to say about my channel, I really appreciate you taking the time to look at it. So that's it, guys. God bless.